They thought it was just another ordinary day in Paris. Rolling suitcases. Rushing footsteps. The low hum of a city that never waits. No one knew they were seconds away from witnessing something unforgettable. It began with silence, the kind that sneaks in unnoticed. A single violinist stood near the edge of the crowd, bow resting lightly on the strings. Travelers passed by without a second glance. Then, softly, the first notes of Carol of the Bells floated into the air, gentle, almost fragile, like a secret meant only for those paying attention. A woman stopped mid-step. A child tugged at his father's coat. Someone turned around and whispered, "Do you hear that?" The melody echoed through the vast Parisian space, bouncing off stone and glass, growing warmer with every breath. Just as curiosity spread, a second violin joined in. Then a viola. A cello. One by one, musicians emerged from the crowd as if Paris itself were revealing hidden heartbeats. People slowed. Phones were raised. Conversations faded into stunned silence. From another corner, a soft chime rang out. Bells. Perfectly timed. The music thickened, wrapping the space in something both festive and mysterious. What had started as a quiet moment was quickly becoming something bigger, something impossible to ignore. A man with a suitcase forgot to board his train. A cafe worker leaned out from behind the counter, eyes wide. Strangers stood shoulder to shoulder, no longer strangers at all. Then came the shift. The tempo tightened. The rhythm sharpened. Drums entered with a controlled pulse, sending vibrations through the floor. Brass instruments lifted, gleaming under the lights, and suddenly the music wasn't just being heard, it was felt. That's when people realized this wasn't an accident. This wasn't a solo performance. This was a plan. More musicians stepped forward, rows of strings, a wall of sound forming in perfect harmony. The haunting tune of Carol of the Bells transformed into something powerful, cinematic, and overwhelming. Paris had stopped moving. The crowd had stopped breathing. And just as the music surged towards something massive, something unseen, the final musician of the first wave raised their instrument. And the city waited for what was about to come next. The moment the rhythm locked in, everything changed. What had been a beautiful surprise was now a force of nature. The drums struck harder, steady, relentless, pulling every heartbeat in the space into the same tempo. Violins sliced through the air in sharp, synchronized movements, bows rising and falling like a single living creature. The familiar melody of Carol of the Bells grew darker, bolder, filling every corner of the Parisian hall. Then people noticed something impossible. From the staircases. From behind pillars. From places no stage could ever hide. Musicians kept appearing. A row of brass lifted their instruments, the golden bells catching the light as the sound burst forward, deep, commanding, and powerful. The floor seemed to vibrate beneath the crowd's feet. Phones shook in trembling hands as viewers realized this was no small gathering. This was an army of sound. Children climbed onto suitcases for a better view. Elderly couples clasped hands, smiling through wide, amazed eyes. Tourists forgot every plan they had for the day. The music surged again, faster now, tighter, sharper. The bells rang louder, slicing through the air with perfect precision. Each note felt deliberate, practiced, unstoppable. You could see it on the musicians' faces. Focus, joy, intensity, 100 individuals moving as one. Then the conductor appeared. Stepping forward from the crowd, arms lifted high, they commanded the chaos into absolute control. With a single motion, the sound swelled, layered upon itself, strings racing, brass roaring, percussion pounding like thunder. The crowd gasped as one. This wasn't just a performance anymore. It was a takeover. Paris, the city of art and romance, stood frozen beneath a storm of music. Strangers leaned toward one another, eyes shining, as if sharing a secret they'd remember forever. The energy was electric. Goosebumps rippled through the audience as the melody twisted toward its peak. And just when it felt like the music couldn't possibly grow any bigger, the conductor's hands paused midair. The drums held their strike. The bells hung in the silence. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. And in that fragile stillness, the next wave of sound waited, ready to crash down harder than anyone expected. The silence lasted less than a second, but it felt like the whole city was holding its breath. Then, with a sharp downward motion of the conductor's hands, the music exploded back to life. Violins surged forward at full speed, their notes racing like sparks across stone and glass. The bells returned brighter, faster, more urgent, weaving through the melody like flashing lights in the night. Drums thundered in perfect unison, shaking the air and rattling the floor beneath hundreds of stunned feet. People gasped. Some laughed in disbelief. Others simply stood frozen, tears forming without knowing why. This was no longer just Carol of the Bells. This was a moment. Cameras were everywhere now, lifted high above the crowd, capturing the impossible sight of 100 musicians locked together in flawless harmony. Bows moved as one. Brass gleamed and roared. Every musician leaned into the rhythm, bodies swaying, faces alive with intensity and joy. In the front row, a small child clapped wildly, completely off beat, and no one cared. Nearby, a traveler whispered, "This is why people fall in love with Paris." Even the busiest commuters forgot their impatience, their schedules erased by something far more powerful than time. The conductor drove the tempo faster, pushing the musicians to the edge. Notes collided and intertwined, building a wall of sound that wrapped itself around the crowd. You could feel it in your chest, in your bones, in the way strangers smiled at one another as if they'd known each other forever. Then came the lift. The melody climbed higher and higher, strings soaring, bells ringing with crystal clarity. The sound filled every empty space, turning the vast hall into a cathedral of music. Applause broke out mid-performance, uncontrolled, spontaneous, people unable to hold it in any longer. And just when the music reached its most triumphant surge, the conductor raised one finger. The musicians pulled back, instantly, perfectly, the sound narrowing into a single, trembling thread of melody. The energy hovered, suspended in the air, fragile and electric. The crowd leaned forward, hearts pounding, because everyone could feel it. The finale was coming, and Paris was about to witness something unforgettable. No one blinked. No one breathed. The entire hall leaned into the silence. Then the bells returned, soft at first, almost playful, tapping out the familiar rhythm like a heartbeat restarting after a long pause. One violin answered. Then another. The melody rebuilt itself carefully, deliberately, as if the music were standing back up on its feet. The conductor smiled. With a sweeping motion, the tempo surged forward again. Strings raced, bows flying in perfect arcs. Brass thundered back in, bold and brilliant, their sound cutting through the air like sunlight through clouds. Drums rolled beneath it all, unstoppable now, driving the music towards something massive. The crowd erupted. Cheers burst out between phrases. People clapped along, completely surrendering to the rhythm. Travelers who had never met danced together, suitcases forgotten at their feet. The space transformed, not an airport, not a station, not a public hall, but a living, breathing stage powered by pure joy. Every musician was fully unleashed. You could see it in their faces, grins breaking through concentration, eyes locked on the conductor, hearts pounding in time. 100 performers moved as one force, their sound layered, polished, overwhelming in the best possible way. Carol of the Bells rang brighter and louder than ever, echoing far beyond the walls. Then came the final charge. The conductor lifted both arms high, holding the musicians at the edge. The bells rang faster. The drums hit harder. Strings climbed higher and higher, pushing the melody to its absolute peak. The crowd counted unconsciously, feeling the ending rush closer with every beat. And then, a final, explosive chord tore through the hall. Sound crashed. Bells rang. Brass roared. Drums struck with thunderous force. The last note hung in the air, bold and triumphant, refusing to fade. For one impossible second, there was silence. Then Paris erupted. Applause thundered from every direction. Cheers echoed off the walls. People shouted, laughed, wiped tears from their eyes. The musicians lowered their instruments, breathing hard, smiling wide, knowing they had just shared something rare. But as the echoes faded, something else lingered. A feeling. Because the music might have ended. But the moment wasn't done yet. The applause didn't fade, it grew. Claps turned into roars. Paris refused to let the moment end. People whistled, cheered, and shouted, "Bravo!" from every corner of the hall. Strangers hugged without hesitation. Some stood on tiptoe, still trying to spot every musician, as if afraid the magic might disappear if they looked away for even a second. The performers lowered their instruments slowly, smiles breaking through the exhaustion. A few exchanged glances that said everything, "We did it." The conductor bowed, not alone, but to the crowd, to the city, to the shared heartbeat that had filled the space just moments before. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of dispersing, the audience stayed. Phones remained raised. Children clapped until their hands turned red. Travelers who had missed announcements didn't care anymore. The music had rewritten their schedules, their moods, their memories. A woman wiped tears from her face and laughed at herself. A man called his family on video, turning the camera around to say, "You won't believe what just happened." A couple stood quietly, hands entwined, as if they just witnessed something meant only for them. This was more than a flash mob. It was proof. Proof that in a world rushing forward at impossible speed, music still has the power to stop time. That 100 strangers, united by rhythm and purpose, can transform an ordinary place into something unforgettable. That for a few minutes, a city as vast as Paris can feel small, intimate, and beautifully human. As the musicians began to melt back into the crowd, applause followed them like a wave. Some bowed again. Others simply smiled and disappeared, leaving behind nothing but echoes and wide-eyed faces. Soon, footsteps returned. Announcements resumed. Life restarted. But something had changed. Because everyone who stood there that day would carry the same thought with them. They didn't just witness a performance. They were part of it. And long after the final note faded, carol of the bells continued to ring. Not in the air, but in their hearts. Chachi.